Secrets of the Obscure has been out for a week now, and it has never been a better time to be a Guild Wars 2 player. So today, we're going to chat about one of the biggest features they've released in this expansion, Relics. Welcome back everyone. With the Secrets of the Obscure expansion release, runes have now been completely reworked. Now previously, runes would come in a set of 6, with the first 5 generally being basic stats, and the 6th bonus usually means something a bit more dramatic, and that would usually be the main reason you would actually take a relic. Whereas now, this 6th bonus has been removed from the rune and shifted over to a new relic slot instead.
How you doing? You doing good? You're going to supervise.
So previously with runes, one of the issues that you would have is you would want runes both for the stats they provided, but also the 6th bonus that they would give you as well. And sometimes you would run into the situation where the 6th bonus would require you to take stats that weren't particularly useful to your build. Whereas now, you no longer have to make that choice. You can take the runes that you want for whatever stats you prefer, and the relic for that omega bonus that you used to get from your 6th slot on your rune. This has opened up a whole range of runes that you're able to choose now that you don't need the 6th bonus, given that's shifted over to a relic. Overall, this has increased the power level of basically all builds in the game. So when you log in for the expansion, you can expect a straight increase in power on your character. Just make sure you actually go through and equip a relic. It won't happen by default. A whole bunch of new relics have been released with this expansion, with a lot of them being available from this relic chest you'll get whenever you log into a level 80 character for the first time after you've bought the expansion, with some unique ones coming as part of this expansion. As is usually the case with equipment in Guild Wars 2, some of these are just straight up better than the others. So today, we're going to go through which of these relics you as a player actually need to care about obtaining, and the ones that are generally going to be the best in slot for you to play. We'll break these down for power, condition damage, and healing builds. We'll touch on some of them that are great in World vs. World, and we'll have some honorable mentions for some that I find particularly useful or just have fun playing with. First up, for our power damage relics. Generally, there isn't that much variety for power damage relics, with the 2 best ones being available outside of the expansion. First up, we have the Thief Relic. The effect of this is that whenever you strike an enemy with a weapon skill that has a recharge or a resource cost, so this would be if it has a cooldown or if it costs initiative, you'll gain a 1% strike damage buff for 6 seconds, up to a maximum of 8 stacks. So this will keep adding from 1% up to 5%, and once this ramps up for long fights, you should basically have a 5% damage buff from there. This is the most consistent relic that you'll find for power builds, and if you don't know which one to pick, this one is going to be a very good choice. Next up, we'll have Relic of Fireworks. Its effect is that whenever you deal strike damage with a weapon skill with a recharge time of 20 seconds or more, you'll gain a 10% strike damage for 6 seconds, with this duration refreshing whenever you apply it again. This is going to result on much higher burst damage than the Thief Relic, at the cost of you needing to actually have weapon skills with a high enough cooldown to trigger it. Compare this to something like Revenant, which doesn't typically have a lot of high cooldown weapon skills. It can't really make use of this relic, so instead it uses the Thief Relic. So when you're deciding between Fireworks and Thief, you really just need to ask yourself, does my class have some high cooldown skills that I'm going to be using very often? If yes, you probably want to choose the Fireworks relic. If not, fall back to the Thief Relic and you should be good to go. Next up, for our condition damage relics, we basically have 3 choices that we're typically going to fall back to. One of the most popular ones is the Relic of Akeem, which is only available through the new expansion. You can also get it through a World vs. World reward track, which you may find slightly faster. The effect of this relic is that whenever you disable an enemy that's afflicted by 5 or more stacks of confusion or torment, you inflict confusion and torment on enemies around the target, as well as the target itself. This is a fantastic relic on some condition damage classes that rely heavily on torment and have the means to regularly disable enemies. This will be things like stuns, dazes, knockdowns, anything similar to that. If all those conditions are met, you're probably going to want to use the Relic of Akeem. This is by far the best in slot relic for the absolutely busted condition damage Scourge at the moment. So if you are a Scourge enjoyer, make sure you grab this relic as soon as you can. Next up, we have the new Relic of the Fractal. This is another expansion exclusive one, and whenever you inflict bleeding on an enemy with 6 or more stacks of bleeding already, you'll also inflict burning and torment. So this is going to be a great relic for condition builds that don't have the ability to constantly apply interrupts, dazes, stuns to enemies in order to trigger the Relic of Akeem. So whenever you choose between the Relic of the Fractal or the Relic of Akeem, just ask yourself, do I stun, daze, knock down my enemies regularly? If I do, I probably want the Relic of Akeem. If not, I probably want the Relic of the Fractal. Next up, we have the Relic of the Aristocracy. This relic is generally considered worse than both the Relic of Akeem and Relic of the Fractal, but the benefit of this one is that it is available from the relic chest you get as soon as you log in after you purchase the expansion. So this is an incredibly easy one for you to get. So if you don't have access to the Relic of Akeem or Relic of the Fractal yet, you can easily slot in the Relic of Aristocracy and you'll generally have a pretty good time with that. So this is a very good stopgap relic whilst you're still going through and exploring the expansion. The effect here is that you'll gain 3% condition duration for 8 seconds when you inflict weakness or vulnerability on a foe, up to a maximum of 5 stacks. So this will eventually end up with you getting an extra 15% condition duration. This is a very useful relic if you can apply weakness or vulnerability. A lot of builds can do this naturally, which makes this a very good fallback condition relic if you haven't unlocked the Relic of the Fractal or Akeem. Next up, for our healing builds in PvP, we have the Relic of the Monk. Once again, runes and relics of the monk are dominating all healing builds, and the effect here is that you'll increase your healing effectiveness to allies by 1% for 3 seconds after granting a boon to allies, up to a maximum of 10 stacks. Anything that increases your healing effectiveness in PvE is fantastic when you're on a healer build. This is going to be your go-to relic if you're running something like a heal firebrand, a heal scourge, a heal mechanist, anything of that ilk. This is going to be your default relic. Fortunately as well, this is available through the relic chest you get whenever you log in, so it's incredibly easy to obtain. There are some other relics that are quite good in World vs. World for healer builds. We will touch on them in just a bit, but for endgame PvE, Monk Relic is where it's at. Lock that one in. Next up, we're going to touch on some of the relics that are seen use in World vs. World. World vs. World does tend to have a bit more variety in terms of the relics that are used, but we're going to touch on some of the most important ones here. First up, we have the Relic of Iskaran. This is going to be a fantastic relic for some of your more roaming or damage focused builds. Here, after evading an enemy's attack, you'll place the Eye of Iskaran on them for 6 seconds. After this, you'll gain 10% strike damage and condition duration against enemies with the eye on them. This will just really enable you to crank your damage against your opponents, and is a very solid one for all you lovely damage dealers out there. Next up, we have the Relic of Ceres, which, like the Relic of Iskaran, is also another expansion exclusive one. This is a very fun relic and also has some use in PvE as well if you're farming things in open world and want a little bit of extra cleave. Here, after you use an elite skill, you'll summon an Eye of Ceres that emits a big rotating line attack which will deal damage and converts boons into conditions. This is a fantastic relic to use in World vs. World, where boons are key to everything. Anything that removes boons in World vs. World is incredible. This is a very fun relic and very good to use if you're smack bang in the middle of a Zerg. Watch all those boons just disappear. Next up, for our healing focused builds in World vs. World, we have the Relic of the Flock. This one will grant barrier to yourself and nearby allies after you use a heal skill, with a relatively short cooldown of 10 seconds. So if you're playing something like the Heal Vindicator build, or really anything that provides healing in Zergs in World vs. World, this is going to be a pretty good relic to buff up your team sustain and just give them that little bit of extra padding on their health that the barrier provides. Doesn't see a lot of use in PvE, but this is a pretty good one for World vs. World. Next up, we have the Relic of the Antitoxin. Antitoxin runes have been used a lot historically in World vs. World for the extra condition cleanse that they give you. So here, the Antitoxin relic will allow you to remove an extra condition every time you use a condition cleanse, with the caveat that this can only affect an ally once every 5 seconds. This is really going to help crank your condition cleanse and relieve a lot of pressure from your team. It's been amazing in World vs. World before, and it will continue to do so now. Now for some honorable mentions or just some relics that I particularly enjoy using. First up, we have the Relic of Speed, which is honestly quite good in World vs. World on classes that don't have a great deal of mobility. This is used a lot on things like any Necro spec to just really help you move around fights a lot easier. Also, I find this particularly useful in some sections of PvE where I need to move around just a little bit faster. I got great value out of this when I was doing one of the new achievements in the Wizard's Tower. keep this one in mind. Next up, we have the Relic of the Warrior, which will go through and reduce your weapon swap recharge time by 25%. While you typically get higher damage on builds using something like Thief, Fireworks, or the Akeem Relic, this can be quite a nice one if you just want to make your weapon swaps or your rotations feel a little bit more fluid just by reducing that cooldown. I have found really good use for this on Quickness Herald by allowing me to swap between Greatsword and Sword, just to make use of some of the great damage skills that both sets have to offer. If I want more damage, I'll typically go for the Thief Relic, but this is a great one to consider, especially if you're just messing around in open world. And that, my friends, are the most important relics you need to worry about in Secrets of the Obscure. We haven't touched on every relic, and there are some other ones out there that you can mess around with, but if you want a crash course, these are the most important ones you need to get right now. Let me know down in the comments below what other relics you have been messing with. I can't wait to hear what other fun combinations people have come up with. And if you do want to chat about anything else relic or buildcraft related, feel free to check us out in our Discord. I would love to chat to all of you. But in the meantime, we'll catch you all next time. Cheers.